It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box. LSU, they're back on the field against UNO on Tuesday night, a 6:31 pitch at Alex Box Stadium. The Tigers look to snap a 3-game losing streak overall here on the season. We'll get you a brief preview, of that matchup before we get out of here today on Musso at the Box. But what I really want to do today is look at postseason scenarios for LSU, because that is obviously what everybody really wants to know is, can this team make a run in the second half of Southeastern Conference play? It's what we've talked about literally all season long, that the schedule was going to lighten up, and could you make a run in the second half of conference play after you went through that gauntlet? Well, we know what's happened. LSU went through that gauntlet. It was a total failure. They are 3-12 in the league. If the SEC tournament started today, they would not be in. So I get it. The outlook on postseason play for LSU could not look any bleaker at this moment halfway through conference play. It could not. Like, you aren't even into Hoover at the current moment. I don't really need to go through all of that again. We talked about that plenty in the recap of the Tennessee series. In fact, really that entire episode was just kind of us talking about that stretch and less about the series against Tennessee. But that's where you are. So what I want to do is we'll look at RPI. We'll look at each series here down the stretch. We will go through each of the five, and try to predict it out right now and see what we come out with and see what LSU, the climb that they have. Because I will say, while the schedule lightens up, it's not as easy of a trek as we thought it would be, just 3 weeks ago. So, yes, your schedule lightens up, but, man, you are going to have to play better baseball to get the desired results. Smash the like button. If you have not already, get subscribed up to the YouTube channel. If you have not already, get subscribed up on your favorite podcast app. If you have not already, of course, you can follow me on social media as well. A lot of the handles are on the scroll down there at the bottom. Let's dive right into it, and we'll start with the postseason. So, look, LSU right now, Tigers are 22-15 overall. They are 3-12 in the SEC. That has LSU sixth in the Western Division, 13th overall in the Southeastern Conference. So at the halfway point, that's where you stand. How does LSU make the postseason? There's a couple of ways. You can get really hot down the stretch, increase your SEC win total to 14 wins, which would have you in. Without Hoover, without anything, that would have you in. That does not seem likely. LSU would need to go 11-4 over their final 15 conference games to get to 14-16 in the league, but that would have you safe. Like, 14 is always kind of that magic number when you're talking about SEC teams getting into the NCAA tournament. You're at 13, you probably need to go to Hoover and win a game, but if you're at 14, you feel really good. Again, LSU would have to go 11-4 over their last 15 to get to 14-16, and that does not feel likely. What is more likely is LSU wins the series they have against lesser opponents, holds off on sweeps when they face the better of their opponents that remain, and you get into Hoover and you win a few games there and you try to get in that way. The great thing for LSU is, while the schedule lightens up from a opposing talent perspective, right? Like, I think all of us sitting here would say LSU's more talented than Missouri. Even those who have questioned how talented LSU actually is this year, I think all of us would agree that LSU is more talented than Missouri, right? I think all of us would agree that LSU is more talented than Auburn and Ole Miss. So you win those series, and then you have the one against Texas A&M, which admittedly is going to be difficult, even at home. Texas A&M is the number 1 team in America now after sweeping Vanderbilt. Yeah, that Vanderbilt. And then the series at Alabama, which I have thoughts on when I said when we go through and I'll give you predictions on each of them. I'll get a little bit more into that. But can you win 3 out of those 5 at least? And then that'll have you in, and you could go make a run. But what I was saying is, while these series or the schedule lightens up talent-wise, RPI-wise, it doesn't. Out of LSU's 5 remaining series, 4 of them are quad 1 series. The only one that's not is Missouri, and even that's a quad 2. So if I look at LSU right now sitting at 51 in the RPI, you can say that's not great. And no, it's not. Like, you're not even in quadrant 1 at that point. But you have a talent advantage in the majority of these series going home. And all of them, even though you have that talent advantage, are quad 1 series. You win them, your RPI will move up, and that will not be a problem. You consider you go to Hoover, win a game or 2 there, that's going to only increase your RPI even more. RPI won't be an issue for LSU when it comes to making the NCAA tournament. Your conference win total will be. Like, that will be. Think back to 2011. LSU had an RPI in the 20s. Like, their RPI was, I think it might have been like 21 or 23, somewhere in that range. They were fine there. They were 13 and 17 in the league, and they missed the SEC tournament, and that's ultimately what kept them out. Now, at that point, only 8 teams got into the SEC tournament. Now it's 12, so your chances are obviously increased, but if LSU, gets into the NCAA, gets into the SEC tournament in 2011, I mean, Paul Maneri owned that thing. They would have won a couple games, and they would have been into the NCAA tournament. So that's why I say, like, RPI is not going to be a problem. It wasn't a problem for that team. It's not going to be a problem for this team. The problem is going to be your conference wins. 14's that number you feel real comfortable at, where you don't even really need a performance in Hoover. 14 doesn't feel realistic. So what is realistic? Because now the math is really hard. Like, that's why you look at that stretch of the first 5 series, and you lost all of them, and you sit there and say, that's a total failure, because the math has just gotten harder and harder. Even if you lose all 5 of those series, but you steal a game at Arkansas, you steal a game at Tennessee, the math is in a better spot for you. But you got swept in both of those series, which you could not afford. And now you're stuck needing to go 11 and 14 to get to the 14 wins, which we have established is not attainable. Here's the thing for LSU. Let's take these in order. So they'll be at Missouri next. That kicks off the second half of conference play. And Missouri is one of those games, one of those series where it's like, oh, that looked like one that LSU could go and really have their way. Then Florida rolled into Como and got swept. Now Missouri lost the series after that. I mean, they have a losing record overall. Like, Missouri's not a good baseball team. This is a series that LSU should win. The question is, can LSU sweep it? And I don't know if that's attainable right now. LSU's 1-8 on the road in conference play. That's really bad. I mean, do any of you feel confident they can go on the road where they've won 1 game and win 3, even though Missouri's not great? I don't know. I'll tell you right now, I don't feel confident in that, but I think they get 2 there. All right, so you're 2 out of 3 there. You get your first conference series win. That's great. That'll put you to 5 and 13. You come home, you face Auburn. Auburn's the only team in the league that is worse than you, and at home, you have to win that series. And I'll throw this out there. Auburn has not been great the last 2 years, and LSU's been much better than they were, and Auburn's beaten them. Jay Johnson has not beaten Auburn yet in a series. That's something there I have to get done this year, because like I said, Auburn's the only team in the league that's worse than you right now. Can you sweep that at home? I don't know. but I think you win it. So let's say you're 2 out of 3. That puts you at 7-14 with 3 weeks to play. You're at home again against Texas A&M, and you're not going to win that series. Right now, I have no reason to believe that LSU will win that series against the number 1 team in the country. Now, will Texas A&M be the number 1 team in the country when we get to that point? I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But right now, they look legit. They look like a national championship contender. And you have for the same reason, I have no reason to believe that LSU will beat Texas A&M in that series. I have no reason to believe that A&M won't be coming in here as the number 1 team in America. The key is don't get swept on your own home field. So let's say you lose 2 out of 3 in that series, but you steal 1. You're looking at an 8-16 record at that point. And then you go on the road to Alabama. And while Alabama right now is 6-9 in the league, like they don't have a winning record, they just took a series from Arkansas in Tuscaloosa. You have to go to Tuscaloosa. What did we say about LSU's record in conference play on the road right now? They're 1-8. That's going to be a really hard series, a swing series. It's a toss-up, really, when I look at it, because, yes, LSU's the more talented team, but you've struggled on the road, and Bama's played well at home. Stealing that series is going to determine how much work you have to do in Hoover. Because if you beat Auburn and Missouri in series, that's going to pretty much clear the path for you to Hoover, provided you don't crater in your final 3 series. Because you will have tiebreakers over the 2 teams right there in the standings with you who, you're in lockstep with. But Alabama is going to be that swing series, in my opinion, to tell you how much work you need to do in Hoover. And I'll be honest, I don't think, as of right now, LSU goes on the road and wins that series in Tuscaloosa. The key is you can't get swept. So if you take 1, you're looking at 9-18 in the league. And then you come home against Ole Miss, who is not good, and you are way more talented then, and it's at home. And if at that point you aren't having a sense of urgency, you never will. I think they do, and I think they take that series 2 out of 3, and that would put LSU at 11-19, which means they would need to win at least, in my opinion, at least 2 games in Hoover, because the selection committee looks at those as SEC wins. So that would put LSU at 13 SEC wins, and their RPI will have risen probably somewhere into the 20s at that point. And with 13 SEC wins and an RPI in the 20, having made it to Hoover, in the 20s, I should say, and having made it to Hoover, that should be enough to sneak LSU into the NCAA tournament, probably as a 3 seed on the road in a regional. That's the path. You'd love to get to 14. I don't think that's attainable. The key for LSU and why the math works against you so much is yet you need to sweep now. And I just don't know if LSU has that in them this year. Notice I didn't pick them to do any of that. Like, can LSU sweep Ole Miss at home? Yeah, they can. Can they sweep Auburn at home? Yeah, they can. Will they? I don't think so. Because I don't think you have the depth on the mound that you count on enough. The quality of depth on the mound, I should say. And offensively, you are not in a position to win a slugfest. Like when LSU started sweeping teams last year, because we were wondering if LSU was going to be able to sweep teams last year. They did it in a variety of different ways. I always point to that Alabama series from last year. LSU won 3 games in 3 different ways. They were dominant on the mound with Paul Skeens in game number 1, and you held on for dear life with your bullpen, but you swung the bats enough. And in game 2 of that series, you won it behind a stellar outing from your bullpen. And then you just outslugged Alabama like 15-13 or something like that in game number 3. Like, this team doesn't have that capability. Now, could LSU go out and pitch like they did against Tennessee and get enough offense against these teams that aren't as talented, sure, maybe. And maybe that's how you get a sweep. But the only way LSU's getting to 13, to 12, 13 wins in conference, in my eyes right now in the regular season, they're going to have to sweep and probably have to sweep multiple of these series to do that. Because I don't think you're winning against Texas A&M the series, and I don't think you're winning the Alabama series. I think you make Hoover, and that's ultimately your goal right now. Because if you do that, the NCAA tournament hangs in the balance when you're at the SEC tournament. But I do believe LSU is better, flat out better, than 3 of the 5 teams remaining on their schedule in conference play, and I think they will win those, and that will clear their path to make it to Hoover because they will just leapfrog those teams in the standings. Like, your seed in Hoover is going to stink. Like, it's not going to be good. But getting there is the first step into getting to the NCAA tournament because this feels like an 11, 12 conference win team to me right now, which, man, I just never saw that coming this year. All right. Again, y'all smash the like button if you have not already. Get subscribed if you have not already, both podcast app and on the YouTube channel. Let's get you a brief preview of LSU UNO here. Tigers and Privateers at the box, 6:30 on Tuesday night. At the time of this recording, we do not have starting pitchers announced. I will tell you, for LSU, I think it would make an awful lot of sense if Javen Coleman or Thatcher Hurd got the start for the Tigers. Probably Javen Coleman more often than not, but some of those veteran arms that you didn't see over the weekend, I would hope that you see here in this game against UNO, like Javen Coleman, like Thatcher Hurd, maybe like, a Justin Lure or whatnot. I'd love to be able to see Sam Dutton again, getting back, in tune as you want to use him for the weekend as well. But that was the statement we talked about on the recap of the Tennessee series that Jay Johnson sent to those older pitchers, man. I mean, he went to Moffitt, he went to Anderson, he went to Johnson. Before, Thatcher Hurd, Javen Coleman, they didn't pitch this weekend, y'all. Thatcher Hurd, who was the winning pitcher in the College World Series National Championship, did not pitch in what felt like a really pivotal weekend for LSU. That is a message sent by Jay Johnson. So now I would imagine you see a lot of those guys in this game against UNO, and I think either Coleman or Hurd end up with the start. If they don't, they will at least pitch in that ball game. LSU leads the all-time series with UNO 64-37, won it 16-0 early in the series last year, and LSU's won 13 of the last 16 with the Privateers, coached, of course, by former LSU All-American and national champion Blake Dean. And Dean's had a lot of success there. You look at this team, UNO, 21-14 overall, 6-3 in the Southland. It's a very good league. Their best hitter is a very familiar name to LSU. That is former Tiger Mitchell Sanford is the leading hitter for this UNO team. Coming in on the season, hitting .400. He leads the Southland Conference in slugging percentage, RBI, home runs, doubles, and total bases. And, of course, as you would imagine, leads UNO in all of those. He is the guy you circle in the lineup. That cannot beat you. And, again, familiar name, being that he started his career at LSU. So he's been great. Victor Castillo behind him has been really good as well, hitting .387. This is a UNO lineup that features 5 300 hitters in it. They hit .298 as a club, and they got a little bit of pop as well. Blake Dean teams are going to hit, right? I think we all know that at this point, and UNO is no different. And also, for what it's worth, with Mitchell Sanford, he's 12 of 12 on stolen bases. So he's really the one big threat in the lineup as well, as far as a guy who can take off and run. On the mound for UNO, and I know that's what a lot of people are obviously going to be looking at here. They bring an ERA of 5.83 into this game. It hasn't been it hasn't been great. Caleb Sorosky is one of their best arms. They've used him in a variety of different ways, starts and bullpen this year. The starts for him have been more of the midweek variety. So I guess that's a guy you could potentially see, in the game against LSU. And then Ryan DeLorbe and Nathan Blasek have been their most trusted relievers out of the pen, each of them with 14 appearances to lead the team. So that's a little bit what you're looking at there for UNO. For LSU in that ball game, you want to see them go out there and play well. I mean, you'll want to see the pitching staff continue to make strides. I thought they pitched very well against Tennessee. Can you build off of that? That was a really tough offense that you were facing, arguably the best offense in the country. And LSU, I mean, Tennessee averaged almost 11 runs per game, 10.7. They were just bludgeoning people. LSU never allowed double-digit runs. LSU was able to stick with them because of good pitching outings. So, keep building on that. It felt better. Leadoff man, 2-out base runners, all of that felt better in that series against Tennessee. Now, the pivotal moments, yes, came with 2 outs. I mean, you can think to game number 3, the double by Cal Stark in the bottom of the 8th. Excuse me. The 3-run homer by Christian Moore in the bottom of the 7th, that came with 2 outs. And that ultimately iced that ball game, in a sense, for LSU. Yes, they got it back to a 2-run deficit, and you gave up 2 more in the 8th inning. So, like, that pivotal moment, yes, that was with 2 outs. Griffin Herring hanging that slider to Dreiling, that was with 2 outs. And that ultimately gave Tennessee a 2-1 lead in game number 2. So, like, those moments were extremely pivotal. Excuse me. But ultimately on the weekend, you were better in that regard, and you pitched better. So continue to improve there. Offensively, yeah, I mean, do what you can. I say keep forcing the issue. Keep trying to score in multiple different ways. It might not work perfectly. You're going to run yourself out of some innings. You saw that at Tennessee. But I maintain that is LSU's best option at scoring runs. And I know that sounds ridiculous coming off the offensive weekend they had against Tennessee when they tried to force the issue a little bit and ran themselves out of innings in certain situations. But you sitting back and trying to slug has just not worked this year at all. And a lot of it is because you've just lacked such clutch situational hitting. So I want to see him continue to force the issue offensively and see if they can't finally hit a stride. I mean, look, it doesn't feel likely, but that's what I want to see. And I saw a lot of y'all's comments about the offense and wanting them to stick to a lineup, and y'all, you're preaching to the choir. I've been asking for them to do that for the better part of a month now, more than that. Like, I'm with you, but they're not going to. Like, at this point, they're not. If they haven't done that yet, he's not going to do it. I disagree with that. I think you say, these are my guys, see if you can't finally build some consistency and go with them. They're not going to do that. I mean, you're halfway through the conference slate now. So, like, I get it. Like, we've talked about it plenty. I think players showing up to the ballpark and not knowing if they're in the lineup is one of the worst feelings, and that's what they've dealt with all year. But that's what they're going to continue to do. So, as far as changes in the lineup you might see Tuesday night, I don't really know how many drastic ones there will be. Maybe you don't see Michael Braswell or Paxton Kling. But I mean, Larson's going to be in there. Travinsky's going to be in there. Jones and White are going to be in there. Bingham's going to be in there. Milam, I do believe, will be in there. So, we'll wait and see kind of where they go with that. But the main thing for me is just continue to force the issue. You have to find ways to push and manufacture runs. So, We'll see if they can get that done. I think LSU will beat UNO, but the bigger issue is what lies ahead of you in conference play, and we spent the better portion of this show discussing that. So I'm on the record with that now, and we'll see how it plays out. That's going to wrap it up here for this edition. Y'all smash the like button on your way out, and again, get subscribed to the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app if you have not already, and be here next time on Musso at the Box.